Hey up puds. Now then, today's the day. I've only had her 8 months, but today we are reviewing her. Mwah. So as you all probably know by now, I own the wonderful Honda CB125R. And I'll just start by saying, I love it. So if you're here wanting a review on how good it is, a positive review because you're thinking about buying one, or you just want your ego stroking because you already own one, stick around. So to start with, I just want to go into the styling on this little Neo Sports Cafe Racer. All you need to do is take one look at it, and I guarantee the majority of people will go, that don't even look like a 125. It's definitely got some big bike styling. So I'll do a quick walk around, not go too much into anything, and we'll get out riding and I'll go into the specs of it. So up front, you've got this lovely large LED light. Just switch it on. So you can see you've got the LED daylight, and then if you come up here, you can flick onto your main beam. Oh, look at that. So you're gonna have no trouble seeing in the dark, that's for a start. We've got this lovely styling on the tank and the sort of tank fairing, with all these little pointless inlets that do nothing because they're not air intakes. It is all for show, but I think it really adds to the bike and it really makes it look like the other CBs in the range, the 650 and the 1000. You've got a lovely short tail on it, decent sized pillion passenger seat, to be honest. Whether you'd want to take anyone on the back of a 125, that is up to you. And of course, if you're only a learner or you're on a CBT, you're not actually legally allowed to do that anyway. Coming to the back, you see you've got the swing arm of all swing arms for your number plate, but tail tidy that shit, bitches. Really nice tucked away exhaust. I just think it looks beautiful. I'm not being biased because it's my own bike, maybe a little. Just climb aboard, and as you can see, it's a really nice wide tank, which is something you don't really expect from a 125. And again, it's because of these. There's nothing in there, you know, the tank ends around there, but it gives it that styling, it gives it that angular shape. Looks wise, I can't fault it, I really can't. And up front here, you can see it's a really nice, bright, clear TFT display. So you've got fuel indicator, time, revs along the top, nice big mile/hour speed indicator, overall miles. You can flick between a few settings of average MPG. You can see mine's at 104.3 miles per gallon average at the minute, which is outrageous fuel consumption. It's brilliant. You've also got gear indicator, and it actually does tell you if your side stands down, so that's a nice little feature. And buttons along here for selecting your different modes, but no extra riding modes, but just a few little things to flick through there. And also, when you switch it on, let's ride. So now you've seen the bike, let's get out riding and tell you a little bit more. Boom. So I'll just start by saying the engine on this little beast is, oh man, honestly, fantastic. It does not miss a beat. This little single cylinder is so good, honestly. It's a beautiful little engine. I think, to be honest, you're always going to get bulletproof engines when it comes to Hondas, but this thing is, yeah, it's pretty special. And to say it's what I decided on my first bike, I think I was very lucky, because I'd not done a ton of research beforehand, and from now I just know that I found out since that it is just fantastic. So we'll get on to the power. The little single cylinder engine puts out around 14.7 horsepower at 10,000 RPM, which is the very max of what you can have for a CBT as well. So they've obviously intentionally done that so that you're getting as much out of the bike as possible on the restricted license that is the CBT.
It's a 125cc engine, probably should have started with that, but alas, it matters not. And in terms of torquiness, I believe it puts out 11.6 newton meters of torque at 8,000 RPM, which is again, for a 125, pretty respectable. I can't argue with that whatsoever. And I tell you something, in comparison to other 125s that I've ridden, it can get up to speed, it certainly can. Today we've been out on the bypass and it got up to 60 and pushed up to 70 just fine. I mean, obviously it takes longer than a little blip of the throttle, as I think the 0 to 60 on this is over 10 seconds as opposed to, you know, 650 that'll go 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds. But you know what, it's absolutely no issue at all, because when you're on the restriction of the CBT, it's going to give you as much as you can get, which cannot be bad. I think the top speed of this thing as well is pretty much around 70. You can push to 80 if the wind's on your back and you're tuck in, but I'm not the smallest bloke, and I think to be honest, I've got to that before the wind was very much on my back and I was going down a big hill. So I think you're realistically looking at 70 is your max, because like I said, on the bypass I was like full chat and it wasn't doing anything else. I think it sat at 67 and then started to drop. Whee. So I'll move on to riding position now. It's a naked bike, it's a 125. It's not a sporty riding position, which is probably what you're going to want to know. In terms of comfort, it's fantastic. It's brilliant. You could ride this for hours and hours and hours and you'd be absolutely fine. Like I said, we've been out today a good couple of hours, pushing 3 hours maybe, and my ass is very much fine. In fact, my ass does have a decent amount of padding, but I'm not talking about my ass padding, I'm talking about the bike. So I believe the seat height is 810, which is quite high for a 125 to be honest, but I can almost flat foot the bike completely, and I'm 5'9", so a little bit smaller than that and you'll be absolutely fine. Likewise, you know, if you're over 6 foot, I do believe you'll be absolutely fine on this bike as well. Oh, these roads are just fantastic. So seat height considered, it's got a very comfortable seat, I think so anyway. It's comfortable than other bikes I've sat on, not too firm, and like I said, you can sit for ages and it'll be absolutely fine for you, no issues whatsoever. Your legs aren't too bent, they're not too tucked up, it's just a natural sort of naked bike riding position. It's probably a little bit more upright than, you know, a normal naked bike, and I do not feel like there's much of a bend in my back whatsoever. So in terms of starting off on a bike, it's spot on, because your body's in such a natural position, you can focus entirely on how to handle the bike. So learning on it and growing into it is spot on. And I tell you something, on roads like this bike is so fun. This is so fun. Your first view of Father Puddling. Check him out. Meow. Wonderful. So I'll talk a little bit about the bits on the bike. Couldn't help myself. So we'll talk about the suspension first. On the rear, it's got a single monoshock. I think it's great. It's non-adjustable, but to be honest, you don't need it to be on a bike like this. It absorbs what you need it to. It's, like I said again, it's comfortable, it's not firm. Spot on. On the front, we've got the 41mm Showa front forks, and they're sweet as a nut. They do exactly what it says on the tin, and it's all you're really going to need for sort of suspension on a bike like this. Under heavy braking, it's probably a rarity that you're going to bottom them out. I have recently had a few issues with them leaking, but I think that's less on the shower front forks and it's more on just the winter riding and just getting grit in your bike. Sometimes things like that just cannot be avoided. Front and rear brakes, perfect for stopping power. Again, all you're really going to need on a bike like this. It is fairly well kitted out because it's a £4,500 bike, brand new. So for a 125, it ought to have some of the good shit on it, basically. Ought to have some of the good shit. And it does have some of the good shit, and it is good shit. I believe, is it Sissin, the brakes that this bike has? Single disc front and rear, but again, it's so light, that's all you are going to need on this bike. That moves me on perfectly to the weight of this bike, and that is a fantastic point. This bike only weighs 130 kilos and it looks just like a big bike. It's so easy to manoeuvre, and especially for a new rider, a bike at 130 kilos, that's brilliant because you're never going to have to worry about handling the bike. Of course, 130 kilos is still a lot, so you must consider that moving your bike around, you can't just fling it about, but 130 kilos is better than, you know, the bikes that are pushing 200 kilos. So very manageable weight for a first time bike. Because I've just previously mentioned it, I will mention probably one of the negatives of this bike, one of very, very few, I'll just add, and that is just the price tag on it. The model that I'm on, the 2019, this was around £4,500 British pounds to buy from new. I believe I got mine for around 3,800, and that only had 200 miles on it, so it almost was a brand new bike for me. So I got a decent deal on this. But yeah, I believe for the new model you might be looking at closer to 5. I'm not sure, I'm not 100% on the new model, because that is slightly spec'd up from this, I believe. The tyres, the Dunlop tyres that this comes with, again, very good tyres. I've had absolutely no issues with them so far. So they have had a decent amount of running in now, and you know, they've not really let go on me once, obviously, and it don't feel like they've ever come close to letting go on me, and I definitely feel confident. And I think the thing about tyres is, as long as you've got the confidence in the wet, that's the main thing, and I do. And like I said, they've never felt like slipping. I do just want to put in here though that this bike, for a 125, I personally think that this bike is phenomenal. I'm not just saying that because it is my bike, but in terms of starting out on a bike, the amount of times I've had people say, you know, that it looks bigger than a 125. So if you really don't want to be seen as a newbie bitch, then I would highly, highly recommend this bike. And the great thing about Hondas, especially these 125s, they are so sought after that I think they just hold the value perfectly. I've had a lot of people mention that they've owned this bike and then sold it after a year, and after a year they've said that they've just basically sold it for the money they paid for it, which I think is a real testament to the bike and how good it is, because the build quality on this thing is just second to none. You always know Honda are going to make good engines, and build quality is always top of their game, and I'll be honest, it really is. They've absolutely nailed it with this bike, and I am not surprised seeing how popular they are. I always hear this thing that mentions that these bikes, that Honda bikes are boring. I don't really like that, because this is my first bike and it's a Honda, and I think it is so fun. Maybe that's the nature of a 125. When you're on any road you can pretty much accelerate as much as possible. But this bike's not boring, and I 100% guarantee if you went and got one of these as a first bike, or even a run around, you are going to have fun on it, and I can guarantee that. We've just been through the Dales, and on those roads, the roads that are too tight, that are 600 will give you any more, having a 125 at 130 kilo that is flickable as anything will just do wonders for you. You will have so much fun on it. You may have seen my heated grips on the bike, and I have mentioned them in a previous video. I've gone through them. They're not standard to this bike, so they're an aftermarket part, so just keep that in mind, that it doesn't come with heated grips, it doesn't come with things like a heated seat. It's a 125 at the end of the day, and they've put a good amount of money into making it a very robust, very attractive looking 125. The fuel consumption on this thing is incredible. I've ridden it for 9 months, ragged it a little bit, must admit, and it's still saying that my average fuel consumption is 103.7 miles per gallon. It's gonna go and go and go, and it's gonna be absolutely cheap as chips to fill up. At the minute, from empty to full, the tank for me is £10, 10 Great British pounds. And to say the fuel capacity on this bike, I believe, is a 10.1 litre fuel tank, you really just cannot go wrong. So all in all as well, the gearbox is pretty good. It has a slight issue when you're in neutral, clicking down into first. You've just got to let your clutch out a slight little bit so that you can knock down into first. But it's not an issue, really. Brethren! Yes, lad.
So anyway, guys, our first review, our first puddling review, comes to an abrupt end. I hope you've enjoyed, I hope it's helpful. Fingers crossed those of you out there with a CB125R will agree with some of the things I've said. Let me know if you've got different opinions on the bike, and let me know if you buy one. But for now, I bid you adieu once again. Anyway, see you in the next one, guys. Peace! Also, be an absolute god and subscribe to Pudmoto. Do it. Go on. How many you want?